Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Chosen One Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Jason, joined by my co-host, Captain.
Hello.
And all right, so today for episode 14 of the podcast, we are bringing you guys a very personal video. The Clone Wars season 7 is all wrapped up. We reviewed all of the episodes in the entire season but one of them, so you can go back and binge watch all of our reviews if you want to. Last week we finished up by giving our review of the finale and the whole season, the season as a whole. So yeah, go check that out if you haven't already. And so today, now, because there's not too much Star Wars news going around right now, we're shifting gears to something that we did back in episode 2 of the podcast, where we ranked out all the Star Wars movies. We each gave our own personal list of all 11 Star Wars movies. So today we are bringing you guys me and Captain are bringing you guys each of our top 5 characters in all of Star Wars. So, like I said before, this is a very personal list, very personal video. And yeah, so we're just going to get right into it, and we're just going to talk about our favorite characters and why we love them so much. So, thank you guys for joining, and we're going to start with Captain's number 5
Nah,
character.
we're gonna start with yours because
Oh.
you've already told me yours, right? And I've kept mine a secret, so I want you to go first,
Okay.
so I can reveal them like that.
All right, that is a good idea. You're right, because I did send you my list. Okay, so first, before we go into the actual list, I just want to start off by saying 3 characters that just missed out on my list. There are obviously a lot more characters who were in contention for the list, but these are the 3 that I would say were kind of in contention for the number 5 spot, but they just didn't make it on there. I have Obi-Wan Kenobi. I absolutely love Obi-Wan as a character, the very wise, witty Jedi. I think all 3 major iterations of him, original trilogy with Alec Guinness, prequel trilogy with Ewan McGregor, and the Clone Wars with James Arnold Taylor, all 3 actors, and James Arnold Taylor being a voice actor, just made that character so memorable and so amazing. And I really think that it's the acting and just the pure emotion of the character that kind of drives why so many people love him so much. And yeah, so Obi-Wan just missed out on the list. Also Han Solo. Who doesn't love Han Solo? Harrison Ford is behind Sylvester Stallone, my favorite actor on the face of the planet. There's just nothing else that can be said about Han Solo. I think every Star Wars fan loves him. He's one of my personal favorite characters, but just didn't make it on the list. And then another character that might come as some of a shock, but a lot of people have been putting her on their favorite character list as of late. But my number 5 is Ahsoka Tano. I really do love Ahsoka. Watching the first couple seasons of the Clone Wars, she's a little cringy. She's a little. It doesn't really click with me. But just how she matured as a character, moving through the Clone Wars, and what we got of her in Clone Wars season 7. I mean, I think the reason why right now I have such an inkling for her as a character and why I'm talking about her for an episode like this is probably because of all that Clone Wars hype. I'm still kind of on that Clone Wars hype train, and just how much, and it just shows how much I really love Ahsoka. And now it's just kind of coming out because we're still just removed from the Clone Wars, and now we have news that she's going to appear in the Mandalorian, and then there might be a Rebels sequel series. So there's a lot of news and a lot of love surrounding Ahsoka, and yeah, I have a soft spot for Ahsoka, always have, since the second she walked out of that ship as Anakin's apprentice in the Clone Wars movie, which is still a horrible movie, but this series was able to pick up the slack for that. And yeah, so Ahsoka is the last character that just missed out. So now going into number 5, and speaking of riding the Clone Wars hype train, my number 5 pick is Darth Maul. Now, I have always loved Darth Maul. I really, really loved The Phantom Menace when I was younger, and there was just something so ominous and mysterious about Darth Maul, and the fact that he barely talked, but just by his presence, I mean, in that whole entire fight sequence at the end of episode 1, which in my opinion is probably the most well done lightsaber fight in the entire series, maybe not the most impactful, because I think that's in episodes 5 and 6, and in episode 3, those lightsaber fights at the end, those are really the more impactful ones. But the choreography and the realism and just how amazing that lightsaber fight is, and it is really the duel of the fates. That I absolutely just love Maul mainly for how he's portrayed in The Phantom Menace. And then obviously he dies in the Phantom Menace, and I just remember when they brought him back in Clone Wars, and it was a shock to me, and just me loving the character and so much, and wishing that he would have stayed on and been a more intricate part of the prequel trilogy. I wish they would have just kept him going into Episode 2 as a villain. Obviously we got Count Dooku, and, you know, Christopher Lee is Count Dooku. That was pretty good too. But I wish they would have kept Darth Maul around a little bit more. But obviously it was intricate to the character development of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan that he you know, so-called died. But then the fact that Lucasfilm kind of resurrected him in the Clone Wars Season 5 and gave him this incredible arc that, you know, his pure hate for Obi-Wan and his lust for power, and that he's just been sitting in this garbage heap for over a decade, just waiting and waiting and waiting to get his revenge on Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's just something that's so interesting and amazing about a villain like that. And then bringing him back in the Clone Wars, and then what we ended up, throughout the whole Clone Wars series, and then what we just got of him in Season 7, just, you know, a pure badass with a lightsaber, with the Force and everything. And obviously Ray Park does a great job portraying him as a fighter in the original, in the Phantom Menace, in his original iteration. And then in the Clone Wars, Sam Witwer just does an incredible job voicing him. I always remember the joy I felt in that little Solo cameo. Just completely amazing, blew me away. I was really not expecting that. And I mean, there's just so many interesting things about this character and how he's been developed over the years. And then, you know, him coming back in Rebels and getting his final battle with Obi-Wan, and then, you know, dying after 2 lightsaber strikes, or 3, and then, you know, him dying at the hands of Obi-Wan, and then him saying, you know, that Luke, the new chosen one, he will avenge us, you know, all of them, all the people that have been pained by Palpatine, him being one of them, and the Jedi as well. And I mean, there's just so much character development, and there's so much surrounding Maul that I just absolutely love him to death. And yeah, so he is my number 5 Star Wars character. So all right, Captain, so why don't you give your number 5, which I don't know, because like you said, you know my list. I have no clue what your list is, so I am interested to hear what you have to say.
Well, like you, there was instead of only a few that didn't make the cut, there were several hundred that didn't make the cut for mine, because there are quite a lot of characters in the Star Wars universe I love. Yeah. By the way, real funny thing, that whole Darth Maul coming back with being crazy on a junk planet with spider legs. Go play The Force Unleashed, and you'll see where the inspiration from that possibly, in air quotes, came from.
We don't speak of Legends anymore at Lucasfilm. They don't speak of Legends anymore. So.
Yeah, well, I've been watching Sam Witwer's channel, and they were talking about how they made that game, and then later on, Maul came back, and he was like, really? Where'd you get the inspiration for that from?
Yeah.
But just at the bottom of my list, though probably one of the most ballsiest characters in the entire Star Wars universe, is Grand Moff Tarkin.
Oh, so Tarkin, is he your number 5, or do you mean he's one of the people that just missed?
He's my number 5.
Number 5. Okay.
Grand Moff Tarkin is my number 5 because apart from serving through the Clone Wars, not as a Grand Moff, but as I'm pretty sure in
Admiral, maybe. Probably not.
It was no, it wasn't an admiral yet in the Clone Wars seasons that we get him in. But he was part of on a Jedi cruiser, and he didn't like the Jedi from the beginning.
Yeah,
it was just like, you wave your hand around and stuff moves. That's nothing. Watch this. My big British brain is just going to walk in here. We're going to tactically destroy everybody with my awesome accent and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. And the guy that they get to do the voice of Tarkin, I also believe, is the guy who did the mocap for him in Rogue One, which everybody shits on, but I liked him in Rogue One. Yes, he was a little bit kind of sheeny in some areas, but he was brought back from the dead. That's how much of a badass he was. But Grand Moff Tarkin is like on my 5th because he's like, he will, whatever he sets his mind to, he's going to do, and then he's going to overdo. So it's like, we're going to find the rebels. All right, how are we going to do it?
Yeah, let's blow up another planet.
Blow up a planet. It's just how we're going to get the rebels. Well, we've got Princess Leia here, her home planet. We don't know that they've been helping rebels. Let's just fucking blow it up, because that'll be like, we don't care. We're the Empire. Surrender, or we'll blow up innocent people. Which probably doesn't make him the best pick for any list, because he just committed, it's beyond genocide at that point. Planocide. He created planocide. We're inventing a word for it. but he's just that awesome. He commands. He could be in the middle of like a junk pile, and he would command the crap out of that. So he's just that awesome that he deserves to be on the list.
Yes, I really like that. I really like that choice. Tarkin is certainly amazing. And so all right, so now we get into my number 4. My number 4 is none other than Sheev Palpatine. Sheev,
Which version?
All of them. I mean, Sheev Palpatine, the senator from Naboo, the apprentice of Darth Plagueis, then to the whole mastermind of the Sith Grand Plan and the Supreme Chancellor and then Emperor of the Galactic Empire, and then leader of the Final Order in Rise of Skywalker. I mean, I'm
what
actually
right.
Yeah, those don't exist to you.
I watched all of the movies, and I'm pretty sure the last one ended where Luke was looking at his family. I don't remember any of this Final Order stuff. What are you talking about?
I've actually been rewatching the Star Wars episodes. I've been watching one a day. I'm on. I just watched The Empire Strikes Back earlier today, so I'm on Return of the Jedi, my favorite movie, tomorrow. And
God, it's always everybody's favorite movie. Nobody gives love to the 5th one, The Empire Strikes Back.
I think Empire Strikes Back's the best. Objectively, I still view it as the greatest movie in the whole saga, and one of the greatest movies of all time. But there's something about Return of the Jedi that's just my favorite. But throughout rewatching the prequels just so recently as of a few days ago, and just watching the rise to power of Sheev, of Palpatine, and just how amazing of a character that they developed him in the prequels. I mean, he's an ominous figure in the original trilogy. We don't really know much about him other than the little monkey-eyed version that we got in the original version, which luckily they changed in the special edition to have Ian McDiarmid in episode 5. And it's just, there's something so ominous and powerful about a figure that when Darth Vader, who throughout the whole, episode 4 and episode 5, all we ever see of him is ruling other people, dominating other people. Everybody's afraid of him. And to have him go into a room and kneel down to somebody else and call him master, you just know how powerful and incredible whoever is his master really is. Because when you have somebody as powerful as Darth Vader, bowing down and kneeling before this other ominous being who we don't really know much about. We've just heard about him in episode 4, as just the Emperor. And then we heard Obi-Wan and Yoda talk about him in Empire Strikes Back. And then we just know of him as the Emperor. You see his face, and then that's it. And then you obviously see him in episode 6. But to have the ominosity surrounding him as a character in episodes 5 and 6 when he's presented to us, and in episode 6 just the pure power and pure hatred and anger, him toying with Luke and toying with Vader, and then Vader ultimately picking his master up and throwing him off without the no yells, because it was much better when it was just silent in the original,
I like that.
In the original version back from 1983. And then to couple how amazing of a character he is when we don't really know anything about his past with building him up as this sinister villain who orchestrated this entire plot from the beginning, it just shows how insane of a character that Palpatine really is, and how George Lucas was able to work this out to be such an incredible character who's completely developed from the points of when we see him in the prequels, and even what we get of him in the Darth Plagueis novel, which I know isn't canon, but there's no reason for it not to be. It's one of the best Star Wars books out there. In my opinion, it is the best Star Wars book out there, and nothing in there conflicts with the current canon. And it just shows how his rise to power with Plagueis, and that Plagueis chose him to be part of the grand plan to rise through politics, and then he eventually becomes Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, and just his pure lust for power, and him orchestrating the Trade Federation into building up their army and to becoming the Separatists and splitting away, and then manipulating Maul and Count Dooku, and then Anakin and turning him, and just the fact that one person can hide from thousands and thousands of Jedi for 60, 70 years of his life before he becomes the Emperor, it is just completely, it's incredible what he does. And to be the Chancellor of the Republic while also being Darth Sidious, leading the Sith Order with his apprentices Maul, and then when Maul's killed with Dooku, and then obviously getting Anakin in the end of episode 3, for him to be doing that and pulling the strings all along for the entire first 6 episodes. And then it was a little crazy to say that he's been behind everything, even in the in the sequel trilogy. I'm not really a massive fan of how they brought him back in the sequel trilogy, but just to get Ian McDermott just playing that character with his whole heart out, we know how much Ian McDermott loves that character, and the fact that he has really been the only one to ever play him, with the exception of Sam Witwer voicing him in the Clone Wars, and Rebels. But actually, no, I think in Rebels,
don't forget also the original cut of Episode 5,
yeah, with
where
the
Darth
with the monkey,
where Darth Vader
monkey,
kneels down. That wasn't.
Yeah, that wasn't Ian McDermott. They went back.
They did go back and CGI him in, which I don't mind.
Yeah, I don't mind that either.
But they could have done a better job of it.
I mean, they should have done a better job the first time around. They literally filmed the monkey with a
well, it was CGI. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how they did it in Episode 5, how they came up with that. But luckily, they got Ian McDermott, one of the most underrated actors to ever appear in Star Wars, and just how he's played this character from the beginning. I mean, just completely amazing. The fact that, he played Palpatine in the sequel trilogy, and not in the sequel trilogy, in the original trilogy when he was like in his 30s, and then coming back to play him in the prequels to develop his character and his backstory is just completely amazing. And just that I have two villains to start off this list. And I just absolutely love Sheev, Emperor Palpatine, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, whatever you want to call him. So many
Palpy
names
boy.
for such a historic figure. So many names, and so he is my number 4. All right, so Captain, time for your number 4.
Okay, so my number 4 is possibly the only person in any cinematic universe that comes close to being. Well, sorry, it doesn't come close to being, but he's pretty much me, and that is Han Solo.
Good choice.
And I'm not like, yeah, I'm that awesome, but I'm that awesome. Han Solo just as like people would. I saw someone make almost an hour long video. I can't remember what it's called, but it was an hour long video, basically just taking a massive dump on the Solo movie, which is funny because in the Discord chat right now that we're recording, you're using Han Solo, young Han Solo.
Right. Yeah, young
Han
Solo.
And I don't mind that movie. I like it. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's my fourth.
And it's not. He's the actor who plays him is not doing a Han Solo impression, unlike Donald Glover, who did a Billy Dee impression.
And nobody can impersonate Billy Dee Williams.
No, you can't impersonate Billy Dee to the fact that every other part that Lando Calrissian has been voiced by Billy Dee, to the point where I'm pretty sure he voiced he voiced Lando Calrissian in the Kinect Star Wars dance-off game.
Yeah, and I'm pretty
sure.
Chicken Star Wars and all the other.
Yeah, Robot Chicken. Nobody can outplay Billy Dee. Yeah. So if I could have made this a 2-part, it would be Han Solo and Billy Dee, because Billy Dee's the big dick mofo that just runs the entire universe. But Han Solo's there because he's always been good, okay. And people are like, no, he's always been out for himself and all that kind of stuff. But no, if you read some of and I know you shouldn't really consider Legends as canon now.
Yeah. But
Han Solo's always been doing stuff that, yes, benefits him. Okay, it does benefit him a lot, but at the same time helps other people, which is a big thing. Like, yes, we got a little bit of a retcon about how we met Chewie in the Solo movie, because originally I'm pretty sure Han Solo just rescues Chewie from like a slave ship or something like that. But he then goes back and rescues the Wookiees, right? He doesn't just rescue our Wookiee. Yeah. He goes back and rescues, well, I won't say all the Wookiees, because that would be impressive for one man. And probably, Han Solo could do it. But he went out of his way, to just, it's like, Chewie's my mate. Right, let's go rescue his entire family. And then we'll make that really creepy holiday special that nobody watches.
Yeah.
But Han Solo's my 4th, pretty much because me and him are so interconnected. No matter what game I play in outside of just the Star Wars universe, I always go for the charming rogue. And like Han Solo, I do flirt with everything.
All right, so very good number 4 choice. I have him, as one of my just missed. I almost put him in my number 5 slot instead of Maul, but I did replace him with Maul. All right, so my number 3 is a character who's been very, very influential to me, I guess I could say. And I have it's a tie because it is the same person, but it's 2 completely different characters. Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. Now, Anakin is somebody who, when I was younger, growing up with the prequels, I always admired as a character. Before I realized that, Hayden Christensen's acting may have been a little flawed, and before I realized that the prequel trilogy it's still amazing, but maybe, it wasn't executed completely perfectly. I just absolutely adored Anakin, loved him, wanted to be him, everything about him. And he's just such an amazing character. And even though he has that hate within him and the fear and all the things that led him to the dark side throughout the whole entire throughout the whole saga, he always has that in him, but he's still a very good person at heart.
He's
And
a good person.
Yeah, and we see that all the way up until when he eventually saves his son and brings balance to the Force. And really, as much as Luke's the original, obviously we knew of Anakin in the original trilogy, by hearing of him and then knowing that Anakin and Darth Vader are the same person. And then we get Anakin's backstory in the prequel trilogy. But I mean, George Lucas has said it himself that this whole saga is not about Luke. It's about Anakin, and that Anakin was always the chosen one. Anakin was the one who was said to bring balance to the Force. Anakin is the one who brought balance to the Force. I mean, George Lucas has even went as far to say the Return of the Jedi title is not about, oh yeah, the rebellion comes back and defeats the Empire once and for all, and Luke is, returning as a Jedi to defeat the Emperor and defeat tyranny and the Empire, and try to lead a new order of Jedi and start a new republic. That's not what it's about. The Return of the Jedi, George Lucas has said it himself, is talking about Vader, and it's talking about Anakin Skywalker being redeemed by his son and bringing balance to the Force and killing his master. And there's just something so powerful and so amazing about the character of Anakin and the character and Vader. And I mean, so I just talked about Anakin, and then we'll switch to Vader here. Vader, I mean, is just from the second that he walks into the Tantive 4 in Episode 4, is just the most badass villain of all time. I mean, just doesn't care about anybody else but himself until he gets a soft spot for Luke. But he's driven just by his pure anger, and it's not even a lust for power. It's just him already having that power and just establishing, do things my way. Anytime an admiral says something to him that he doesn't agree with, Force chokes him.
Yeah, it's just a shame that his grandson was a massive emo douche
who tried to be him. And then
let's not talk about that plot.
Yeah, Kylo Ren did not make any of our list. I can probably assure that.
No.
I don't think any sequel trilogy character
don't exist to me.
Character.
The only part out of that trilogy that exists is when fucking they go to that sand planet and they walk in and Lando Calrissian shoots a dude in the eye with a crossbow and then says, "Give my love to Leia." That's all that exists.
That's all that exists. And also maybe when Luke meets R2-D2 in the Millennium Falcon. That's the only part I like about
pulling on the
whole movie. But so I mean, and then Vader, just complete pure badass villain. I mean, there's just there's just nothing to dislike about Vader. You can criticize Anakin maybe, by Hayden Christensen's acting and just how he's written as a character, and him and Padme's love interest and whatnot. But I mean, Vader, there's just nothing bad that can be said about Darth Vader. I mean, he is, in my opinion, the greatest villain in movie history, one of the greatest villains in all of media, TV shows, video games, cinema. Pack it all together. Darth Vader is one of, if not the most iconic, the most well-known, and just the best villains of all time. I mean, just James Earl Jones's voice, nobody can ever replicate it. I mean, I know now in Rebels and in Rogue One his voice sounds a little bit weird, but James Earl Jones is in his late 80s. I think he's approaching 90 here in a few years.
God,
he's just a national treasure, that man. And the fact that he just portrayed Darth Vader in such a menacing, villainous way and just made him the most incredible character, one of the most incredible characters ever, is just amazing. And just, I mean, nothing else could be said about that Rogue One scene. I mean, that's Darth Vader. That's just pure badass Darth Vader in the suit with the lightsaber, just mowing every single person down in order to get those plans to help, keep the Empire afloat and destroy the rebellion. And I mean, he's just Anakin, Vader, just great characters. The whole saga is really about him, and not just my opinion, but in George Lucas's opinion himself. And so he's my number 3 pick. All right, so Captain, who is your number 3 choice?
My number 3 choice has 2 names. He originally goes by the name of ARC Trooper 77 from the original 2D animated Clone Wars, directed by the guy who directed Samurai Jack. Gotta get back to the past, Samurai Jack. But later on, he was known as the one and only Captain Fordor. He is such a ballsy trooper to the point where he goes against what he actually says like a second before. Now, if you haven't seen the original Clone Wars 2D animated one, I don't blame you. They were done as like little 3-minute advertisements, technically. And they're all on YouTube as one giant long movie. Okay, so you can go watch them back to back.
Oh, the original. I think I have the DVD volumes of the like.
Oh yeah, no, but they're all on YouTube now, so you can actually go watch them. And someone's actually also done it where they've separated them out into like different arcs because they've all got different arcs as well. Like
it's kind of like a
like the Coruscant arc, which is where Captain Fordor gets his name. But he's just that much of a badass trooper. I'm pretty sure he finally goes out with a rotisserie cannon in hand, spinning around in a circle as several hundred, okay, not like 20, several hundred droids advance on his position, and it takes about 7 shots to kill him. This dude is a badass to the point where he calls for Jedi reinforcements because his point's about to be overrun, picks up a blaster rifle and a pistol, holds down, even though he said he needed reinforcements, but he holds the point himself, throws a gun at the enemy, picks up another one that magically spawns on the ground because that's how animation was done back then, and then proceeds to mow down like a bajillion more, and then, and only then, does Jedi General Yoda just pop up and he's like, no, we must hold the point. So he's like, all right, we'll just hold the point then. But he's that much of a badass. He started off as an ARC trooper in, I'm pretty sure it was actually the first episode of the first 3-minute saga of the original Clone Wars before the 3D one, and he goes on to be in several episodes to the point where he's also fights against and we sadly lose Jedi General Shaggy, which is his official name, which is just funny because it looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, who should have been on the list now that I think of it. But in that one, which everybody's memeing at the moment, we lose Jedi Shaggy, but in the process, the ARC troopers that come to save the Jedi, who will later go on to be known as the Monolith 10, literally kick the shit out of General Grievous. They hold Grievous to the point where they can rescue the rest of the Jedi. Right? That's no strong feat. Okay, stopping Grievous was almost damn near impossible unless you were a Jedi. Yet here's Fordor and 9 other blokes just stood there with blasters and rocket launchers and heavy rotisserie cannons just going, no, mate, you're not coming through here. We're going to get these Jedi. We're going to go away. And then we're going to come back in a later one and we're going to stop all your little droids. And then finally, when I'm in 3D, I'm going to die like the baddest motherfucker on the planet. I'm going to stand in a circle and I'm going to spin. And the pride of the Republic is going to flow out the front of my gun, and I'm going to mow down all of your enemies. And sadly, he does die, which is a shame. But ARC Trooper 77, or Fordor, is the third on my list for being one of the most badass clones that doesn't really have much of a speaking arc, for the fact that the first time he pops up, he communicates through hand signals, for crying out loud. That's how he communicates in the first thing. And then pretty sure he gets a few lines in... and it's the episode where Padme in the Clone Wars, she goes to the banking clan, and it's got Clovis, and like Anakin gets really jealous.
That's hilarious because I'm rewatching the Clone Wars now again because season 7.
You'll be able to see him go out in style. I mean, it was beautiful, and probably the only time in any form of media that I cry. And I don't say that lightly. I'm a cold-hearted mofo. But watching him go out after seeing him in the original ones, I was just like, that's depressing, man. I hoped he would have survived. He's up there with Rex and Wolf and Gregor for being one of the most badass clones ever. So yeah, that's my third pick.
All right, so very interesting third pick. Most of you guys out there probably don't really know who Fordor is. I don't, to be completely honest, I don't know specifically who Fordor is. I have heard of the name, but I just don't, never really caught my attention that much. But all right, so my number 2 choice is, the most well-known figure maybe in the whole series. Kind of generic, but Luke Skywalker. Skywalker is a role model for millions of humans out there in the world, and he's a role model for me as a movie character. And I mean, just Luke is just everything that any, he's just the perfect story for not only a movie but for life. I mean, he's this kid who came, I mean, obviously we find out what he really came from, but judging on it by just looking at episode 4 alone, you see this kid who came from nothing, who's on this desert planet on Tatooine, who has this family lineage that gives him these crazy powers that he's not aware of until, this old hermit, Obi-Wan Kenobi, tells him about it. And it's just from what we get from Luke Skywalker in episode 4 to what we ended up with him, teaching Rey in episode 9. We'll skip episode 8. We'll just say he died somewhere. Say he died somewhere along the line. We don't know where. But he's a force ghost now. He's a force ghost now. Because that scene in episode 9, that was Luke done right. So that was Luke Skywalker. He died somewhere. Skip episode 7 and 8. He didn't exist in there. But I mean, and then to the end of episode 6. I mean, just sacrificing himself basically and saying, I will not kill my father. I will not go to the dark side. He was tempted with the dark side through this whole time, using his anger. I mean, you see in Empire Strikes Back when Yoda when he asks what's in the cave, he says, only what you take with you. Your weapons, you will not need them. What does he do? He goes in there with his weapons, sees Darth Vader, attacks him with anger, slices his head off, and then who's there in Darth Vader's helmet? It's Luke, because that's what he's becoming. Yeah, it's foreshadowing that's foreshadowing that, oh my god, it looks like Vader's a young Luke. But nobody at that point would have ever guessed or assumed that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, Luke's father. Anybody who says, "Oh yeah, I knew they were going to reveal that," they're just lying. Now we look back on it and then view that as foreshadowing. But back then, nobody had any clue that would have been foreshadowing for that. One of the biggest, cinematic spoilers, that anybody could ever think of. And I mean, Luke is just. For everything that we've got of him, except the sequel trilogy, he's just, in the original trilogy, he's just a completely well-rounded, perfectly developed character where he's this little farm boy from Tatooine who wanted to become, part of something bigger than himself, something bigger than life. And that's what he did. Took down an empire with the help of obviously Leia, Han, Chewie, Lando, R2, and 3PO. Took down the empire. He didn't give in to his hate. I mean, in that emotional fight with Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi, when Vader brings up his sister, he brings up Leia, and then Luke just gets completely overtaken by rage and anger, and he slices Vader's hand off. And then what does he realize? He says he's becoming his father. He's becoming Vader, because it's exactly what Vader did to him, using his hate and his anger. And then, he just tells Palpatine, he says, no, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. I will not kill him. And then Palpatine, so be it, Jedi. And then, he's the one who turns, he's the catalyst for Anakin, turning back to the light and fulfilling the prophecy and bringing balance to the Force, which isn't really balance because, no Sith doesn't, the Jedi are, on the upper hand. There's no balance there. But, bringing, so-called balance to the Force and, eliminating the Sith and killing his master. And that's because of Luke. And I mean, there's really nothing else that can be said about Luke. I mean, everybody knows the story of Luke Skywalker. Everybody knows how amazing and influential of a character he is. And so Luke is my number 2. My list has been fairly generic, especially with the last 2 entries, but my number 1 is going to probably shock a lot of you. But all right, well, first off, we'll start with Captain's number 2.
Well, everybody knows my number 2 by 2 names. It's either CT7567 or, of course, if you're familiar with who it is, it's Captain Rex. And my love of Captain Rex started before I knew Captain Rex existed, which was pretty funny because if you go and they actually retcon this, they retcon this guy originally to make him be Captain Rex, and the design of Captain Rex in Star Wars Rebels pretty much comes from this guy who was just on the forest moon of Endor as an old guy. That's where
now he's Captain.
When bringing back Captain Rex, they were like, all right, how are we going to do it? And people were just like, yeah, no, don't forget that old guy from the Forest Moon of Endor that was on that strike team with Han Solo. And it's like, oh, yeah. And they actually went back and they just retconned it to the point where that old guy on the Forest Moon of Endor, who was one of, apart from him, it was also a beatnik commando, who was, just a hillbilly commando guy on that strike team as well. I loved that just random old guy who was kicking ass in his 70s or whatever on this Forest Moon of Endor, and then they went back and made it Captain Rex, and then I was like, that's awesome. But if you go back and if you watch the Clone Wars and anthological, I think it's called, or whatever. In chronological order, so the order in which they happen in the universe.
Yeah.
Rex is just a badass, and he never gives up. I think Rex is actually somewhat of part of the Bad Batch. Okay, the Bad Batch being, the clones that have things wrong with them. I think Rex has got something wrong with him because no matter what, Rex never falters. He never gives up. He's like Captain America. He's always just pushing forward. He's doing his best. And he was never at that point where, like, some clones are just like, oh, Jedis, they just throw us in front of stuff. He was never like that. And he stuck by his brothers. And that's the thing that matters. Like,
and by Ahsoka.
Rex is just probably the best representation of what a clone could be and should have strived to be, because no matter what, he was in the thick of it. He never stood back, and he was never like, you guys go over there, you guys go. He led at the front with his generals, with Anakin and Obi-Wan, who, even though Obi-Wan had the 212th Attack Battalion with Commander Cody, always seemed to be around for some reason. But, him and Cody, they worked off each other. Cody was more analytical when it came to fighting. Rex was more in the thick of it. He was more of a brawler. But it's just the fact that Rex was... No matter even... I'm pretty sure there is, 2 episodes where Rex gets really depressed. But at the end of it, through the help of, his clone brothers and, Ahsoka and all that kind of stuff, with a little bit of a pep rally, he snaps out of it, and he realizes he's got a job to do, and it's just absolutely perfect. He's got some of the best arcs. He gets sniped, and not even a sniper rifle can stop him. I mean, he's just unbelievable. He's always just there, and he's always just fighting. And when he gets older, he gets old man syndrome. He's all just like, these kids, what are they doing today? And it's funny when he's he puts on the Stormtrooper helmet in Rebels, which I'm rewatching because I'm weird like that. And he's like, I can't see anything in this, and then takes off the helmet and KOs someone with it. I'm just like, all right. But it's just the fact that Rex is now officially, I'd say, a 6-person. Yeah, he's technically been in 6 movies, 5 movies, 6 movies. Episode 2. Episode 3, technically solo, but he wasn't in it. But he existed at that point. So he's gone from episode 2. Sadly, he wasn't in the Battle of Geonosis. But he's gone from episode 2 all the way up. Actually, sorry, it's Cody who wasn't in the Battle of Geonosis. There we go. So Rex has gone from basically episode 2 all the way up to episode 6, and possibly beyond. We don't know. Yeah. With his accelerated growth, he might have just died.
Yeah, and apparently, I think. He is still alive at the time of that ending scene of Rebels, which I think takes place 5 years after the Return of the Jedi, when we get that, when Sabine's just talking and it's where everybody went.
Yeah, and Ahsoka comes back.
Of Ahsoka. Yeah, that I believe he's still alive then. And then he's rumored to be coming back in The Mandalorian, which is something we may talk about.
Yeah, no, I saw concept art.
We may talk about that next week. So that. He's rumored to be back in that, so technically I guess he's still alive around that time, so we don't really know when he died, but obviously before the sequel trilogy.
But he's just there at number 2 basically for his sheer will to live. He is unkillable in some aspects, to the point where he's about to die and the Force is just like, no mate, and it sends Kanan and Ezra and they just bring him back and give him that fighting spirit because he's fighting with the Jedi again. He's beautiful. I love him.
All right, so my number 1, this is a character that I have had all over my room my whole entire life.
God, this is going to get creepy.
R2-D2 is my favorite Star Wars character on the face of the planet. I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care if people say he's not a character, he's a droid. I don't care. R2-D2 is just so amazing. I mean, he's just been such a massive part of my childhood, my life, my love for Star Wars.
I mean, I've got one right there.
Yeah, I mean, from the second I have I think 5 around here somewhere. The
I've
second
got a little clock.
The second that I've saw this R2-D2 droid, when I first watched the Star Wars movies, I just always fell in love with him before I even knew what his name is. And just, there's something so amazing about having a character, and it's the same thing with Chewbacca, that we don't know what they're saying, but you get the other characters' reactions around them. And from what you get from 3PO and Luke and and Anakin and all the characters who can understand him, you just get that he's kind of a smartass and just a witty little droid that just makes comments all the time, and it's just amazing. I mean, because I just rewatched Empire Strikes Back, and when they're escaping Bespin, and it's a very, it's a tense, high leverage situation. Luke's fighting Darth Vader, and Leia and 3PO, R2, Chewie and Lando, they're escaping the Empire. They're trying to get off and, try to catch Boba Fett with Han and save Han before they leave. And it's a very high leverage situation. And R2's, beep boop bop boop, and then 3PO is saying, "Oh well, of course I've had days where I look better." And it's just R2 and 3PO have that banter throughout the whole entire thing. That's just completely comedic banter that everybody loves. I mean, there's no way you can't like R2 and 3PO. And I just think the fact that we don't know what R2's saying, but he always has this smart ass personality, and he's kind of a badass because, I mean, like in episode 3, he just takes care of those 2 super battle droids and just lights them on fire with his oil, and then just goes beep boop 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 boo and just walks away. I mean, he's just completely amazing. And then R2 is the character who I've watched a lot of theory videos on, like, why doesn't Obi-Wan remember R2, which technically he does, because in the original novelization of A New Hope, there's a scene in the novel that's not in the movie, and this is the novel that was written back in, I think it came out like when Empire Strikes Back came out. So this is, way back when, and the novelization of A New Hope before the prequels ever became a thing. Written in there is a scene where Obi-Wan says to R2, "It's very nice to see you again, old friend." So obviously, and then Yoda, obviously, we don't know why R2 doesn't recognize Yoda, because obviously they've had encounters in the past and they have that arc in the Clone Wars, because R2's never had his memory wiped. Which means that R2 has literally been through everything we've ever seen in Star Wars, from the prequels all the way to the sequels, and he's seen it all. And apparently, according to some legends and some canon, R2 actually, I learned about this watching some YouTube videos last week, and I find this amazing and just proves to why, I mean, I love R2, just like for like personal attachments, just I love the character, but he's also amazing. He's just an amazing character, which is kind of stupid to say, and he's just a droid, he's just there for comedic relief or whatever. But he's so intricate to the plot because obviously he's the one who gets Luke to the rebellion. He's the one who starts off, basically that, he's the beginning of that whole original trilogy, getting those plans back to the rebels and, going to the Death Star and saving Leia and bringing her back to the rebellion and blowing up the Death Star. And then obviously in the prequel trilogy, we first get introduced to him when he saves the Naboo starship, and then he's with them kind of for the rest of that ride too, and then becomes Anakin's droid. After Padme, I mean, Anakin kind of just takes him or whatever, because I think it was
mine now.
Yeah, it was technically property of Padme. Same thing with 3PO, but
I mean, but when you tap in that ass, I mean, it's all yours, isn't it?
He's been through it all, and he's seen it all, and apparently there is legends. I was watching a few Star Wars theory videos that this just amazes me, that R2 knew that Vader was Anakin, and then obviously, I mean, R2 is a very smart individual. It's not just, he's a stupid droid, and yeah, he'd remember that, but he doesn't put 2 and 2 together. And he knew that Anakin and Vader was Luke's father, and he obviously knew who Obi-Wan was. That's why he remembered him. That's why he wanted to find him so much when he got the message from Leia. And R2 kind of shields all this from Luke to protect him in a way. And there's this arc in Legends that takes place after Return of the Jedi, and somehow Luke knows that R2's never had his memory wiped, and that he was with Anakin, and that R2 has in his database like footage of like Anakin on Mustafar, because R2 was there when he like choked Padme, and had footage of him, and you just had like footage of Anakin like throughout the prequels, and Luke tried to like go into R2's memory base to retrieve this information in some Legends books and Legends comics, and R2 just wasn't having it, and he was not showing him because he wanted to protect him from learning the truth. And eventually Luke like cracks the code and finds videos of him he finds the video of Padme and Anakin's wedding, and then he sees the footage of Padme, Anakin choking Padme to death in return, or to death of sadness and of
no, not sadness,
losing the will to live. And I just find that to be incredibly interesting about the character. And I mean, yeah, there's nothing else for me to really say. It's just something that I just absolutely love R2. He's just amazing. He's the witty little smartass droid, and we don't know what he's saying, but in a way you do because of how the other people react with him. He's been there, and even one of my favorite scenes of all time. As much as I hate the Last Jedi, is the scene when R2 and Obi-Wan. What am I saying? R2 and Luke reunite in the Falcon. And that's the only time Luke smiles throughout that whole movie, other than when he sees 3PO and Leia as a force projection at the end. The only time he smiles is when R2's there, and then R2 comes over and walks off, and you just hear Luke say, "Yes, it's me, I'm all right." Oh, sacred island. Hey, watch the language. And that's just like shows, that's just like what C-3PO says, and it's just his complete, witty smartassness, and it's coming from a droid, and we don't know what he's saying, but we know it's there. And then, he pulls at the heartstrings of every single fan, every single Star Wars fan, and Luke, by pulling a cheap move, as Luke says, and showing him the original footage of Leia. And it's just it's just amazing. He's been there throughout the whole thing. He's been such an intricate plot to so many part to so many characters, and an intricate plot part to the plot. And there's just nothing else. I absolutely love R2. There's nothing else I can say about him. And yeah, so he is my number one. And so, all right, here's the moment you guys have been waiting for. Here is Captain's number one Star Wars character.
It should be obvious to most people by the list that I've picked so far, but the top one on my list is the ultimate meme lord himself, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I love that pick. I really do.
Obi-Wan is... Oh, he's just too good. It's very hard to describe why Obi-Wan is on the top list, but he's... I think it's the fact that he's been through several different iterations of himself, and he's actually learned as he's been through, like the death of Qui-Gon. He grew, like, if we go from the beginning, he grew up from the death of Qui-Gon, like, he was like, oh, damn, I've got to look after this really annoying kid now with his bowl cut. What am I going to do? And then he was like, he was trying to be a good Qui-Gon stand-in in episode 2. He was like, he's like, I will teach you, Anakin, but mate, you got to chill out. Yeah. And then in episode 3, he's got to the point where, he's like, me and Anakin are tight, man. We're like that. We're inseparable. And then when he has to do what he's got to do, which is apparently dismember his friend, instead of, I don't know, just stabbing him like a kebab and smacking him on the head, or don't get me started on the amount of ways that you could have ended that fight. But he regrets having to slice his friend's arm and legs off.
Yeah, and he could have just went up and killed him and make sure he was dead, but he did kind of leave him alone.
No, but the thing was, he was like, when he says in episode 4, that Darth Vader killed your father. That's true. Darth Vader straight up murdered Anakin
from a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view, yeah. But it's just that as well. It's like, Luke's like, why did you tell me Vader was my dad? And he's like, well, from a certain point of view. And it's just like, it's his scapegoat is the best scapegoat ever. It's just like, certain point of view. Yeah, see you in a bit. But when he comes back, so in episode 4, yeah, he doesn't remember R2, but I'm just going to go with he doesn't remember R2 now because he's old. I'm just going to go with that. Because he's not a special breed of human that lives super long. He's just a human. So, brain goes when you get older. But he recognizes that Luke is this guy who might be able to redeem his friend and, bring his friend back, and does the ultimate Jedi, balls out kind of move and just fades out. He's like, peace out, I'm going to teach you a lesson through my own death. Yeah. Which is pretty metal for a Jedi. It's just like, oh, so that's in a bit, but you've learned something, so well done, I guess. But it's just that, yes, in episode 3, he is just a sarky bastard. Just like, another happy landing and all this kind of stupid. It's just like, mate, what are you doing? He's just having fun in this war. He's like trying to stay optimistic and upbeat, and he's always trying to do it no matter what. And, if you've watched Clone Wars and stuff, like when they land on... I can't remember the name of the place, but it's where the son, the daughter, and the father live. Mortis, that's it. And Qui-Gon comes back. Yeah. And they actually got Liam Neeson to voice it, which was really awesome. And he's like, it can't be Qui-Gon, so he's got his lightsaber drawn, but then when he realizes he's his master, he's like, mate, I've missed you. Where have you been? And so I was having a chat. But
some of Qui-Gon communicating with him in the Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus series, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. And, well, the fact that Ewan McGregor is coming back as Obi-Wan Kenobi is just, finally. But it's the fact that out of all of the episodes, yes, Luke is always hopeful, but Obi-Wan's always optimistic no matter what. Like he could be missing both of his arms. He could be a torso, right? Could be missing his arms and legs, and he'd still be like, "No, mate, the Force will guide us. We will get there. The Force will provide me some new arm. I will walk with the Force again." And it doesn't matter what happens to him. He's always optimistic, and even to the point when he's basically just had to defeat Darth Vader and leave him to burn to death on a volcano planet. He's still optimistic that his friend will come back at some point, or maybe something will happen and he will be back. And he basically just loses everybody. Like he loses. That's not just like, oh no, he loses everyone. For a fact, he loses everybody. Then the only thing he has to hold on to is Luke and Leia, and he gives them up. He just straight up was just like, I can't hold on to these, but I'll stay and look after only one of them. Yeah, instead of both of them, I will look after only one, and that will be Luke. And Luke will bring balance to the Force, which, as we see in the awesome Darth Maul fight he has in Rebels, he understands how much that he's grown, because he starts off as young Ewan McGregor, then he goes to the stance of Qui-Gon, his old master, and then he just goes back to himself in episode 3 with his two-pronged fingers at the front, and then he's just like, no, I've grown. And then puts it right in front of him in a defensive stance and just like wipes the floor with Darth Maul. Yeah. He's just he's so optimistic. Like I could watch a supercut of just Obi-Wan Kenobi stuff, and I'd be like, yeah, right, okay, nothing could possibly, I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. But optimism, and it's just he's perfect. He is the meme lord. He's just great.
All right, yeah, so there you guys have it. That is each of our top 5 favorite Star Wars characters in the whole saga. So this was a very fun episode for us to record. Don't start criticizing our list, because this isn't a best list. This is just our personal favorites. So feel free in the comments to list your top 5 favorite Star Wars characters. And so next week we are going to be bringing you guys just kind of a wrap up of the recent Star Wars news, and mainly a discussion on all of the different Disney Plus content that we're going to be getting into the future. We're going to go into all these different rumors that we're getting about different characters in The Mandalorian, and about the Obi-Wan series, the Cassian Andor series, this new female-centric series. That's going to be a great one. And so we'll see how that shapes out next week. And so thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in a week.